additionally, we have added a public comment period to this meeting and every council meeting moving forward. This was at the request of council members from the December meeting as well. There will be sign up for public comment during the scheduled meeting break at 2:30. So just before we break, we'll announce again the reminders to sign up. For folks who are virtual, we'll be able to sign up in the chat function. For general public, the majority of the meeting, the chat function will be disabled, but we will turn it on for folks to sign up if they wish to provide comment. And then if people come in the room and want to provide comment, we have a sign up sheet here. Public comment will be limited to 3 minutes per speaker. And again, I just said that about the chat only being enabled for public comment. Last housekeeping slide. Once again, PCG is taking minutes for the meeting and will distribute them to the council. They'll be posted publicly once the council adopts the meeting minutes during the April meeting. Council members, please put any technical issues or accessibility requests in the chat if they come up during the meeting, and one of our PCG team members will assist you. Friendly reminder for all council members to adhere to meeting agreements as described in the council charter. This includes raising your hand if you wish to speak or ask a question, sharing space for all members so that everybody has a chance to contribute. And just a note that for facilitation of the meeting today, we're going to hold really tight to the meeting agreements and the timeline for each agenda items. There's a lot of really valuable information, a lot of which the council has requested. So we want to make sure we get to every item. So if we near the end of the time allotted for a specific item, we'll table it for next time and we'll make a note of it so that we come back to it. All right, again, to allow for sufficient time to cover the main topics on the agenda, we're not going to go around and do introductions. A lot of you have attended several meetings and know each other, as well as through the work groups and getting to know each other a little bit more even. We do have two newly appointed council members who are joining us, who this is their first large council meeting. So would like to pause and ask the two of them to introduce themselves briefly. With their name and seat role in the council and organization. And then for other council members, when you introduce yourselves before you speak, that would be great. So I haven't had a chance to double check the attendance here. I want to see first, Lance Hegland, are you on and able to, the two new council members are Lance Hegland and Addison Carpenter. So starting with Lance, are you on and able to do a quick introduction?
Yeah. My name is Lance Hegland. I'm a person with a disability who's living in a community residential setting, group home here in Brooklyn Park. Great to be here. Thank you.
Thank you, Lance. Thanks for joining us. And Addison, are you on to do an introduction?
Yeah, I'm on. I'm Addison. I am a chair over at Minnesota Council on Disability, but I on this council, my role is as a former Waiver Reimagine parent of a child with autism. So I have a 17-year-old daughter with profound autism, and then I also am an individual living with disabilities.
Thanks so much, Addison. Welcome. All right. We are doing good, keeping at least an initial start on our agenda here. So the agenda review for today, I'll just cover this briefly. As we've sent out that we had a couple little changes here, but want to go over what we're going to cover today. So we're going to review or cover the action items from the following meeting briefly, do a roll call vote for adoption of the December council meeting minutes. We'll review the updates that were made to the council charter and then do a roll call vote for adoption there. DHS is going to share an update on the 2026 legislative session and how that intersects with the council's work. And followed by that, the counties have a brief update as well. Then we're going to move into work group report outs. And then last thing before break, have some discussion about the implications of the competitive workforce factor and county share contingencies in the legislation. Then as we move into break, we'll invite folks to sign up for public comment. And then after the break again will be at 2:30. When we come back after break, then my BCG colleague Sarah is going to do a presentation on the national trends and cost savings for LTSS. Jeremy is going to do a presentation on financial analysis that includes the LTSS spending cost drivers in Minnesota. And then we'll wrap up with some quick updates on the community partner survey, the legislative progress report, and then we'll talk about next steps and move to public comment period. All right, moving on. And again, I know we're going quickly here, but I think this will really allow us to get to the meat of the agenda here. So we're going to start with the minutes from the December meeting. So I'd like to ask council members, does anybody have any requested updates to the December meeting minutes? All right, hearing none, we are going to go through a quick roll call or why can't I say that? Roll call vote to adopt the minutes. So much like last time, I will call the council member's name and you either will say yes or no for your vote. I would like to note really quick, there will be a couple of council members who will not be voting because they're not in attendance. Jonah is not attending. He is having a delegate attend, but that delegate may participate, but is not able to vote. Lisa Valla is on vacation and not attending. And lastly, I believe Patrick, who was also on vacation, was going to be he's attending, but he may be late as well. And there may be another council member, Terrell, may be late as well. So we'll call them, and if they don't respond, we'll mark them as not present. All right, so we'll start with the vote. And these are in alphabetical order going by first name. So we'll start with Addison.
Yeah, I'll vote yes.
Thank you. Alex?
Yes.
Allison? You don't believe Allison is present. Okay. Anna?
Yes.
Thank you. Barb?
Yes.
Colin?
Yes.
Darla? Genevieve?
Yes.
Thank you. Jay?
Yes.
Thank you. Jennifer?
Yes.
Thank you. Jillian?
Yes.
Thank you. Lance?
Yes.
Thank you. Lori?
Yes.
Luella?
Yes.
Usab? Maybe not present yet. Okay, Nicole?
Yes.
Thank you. Patricia? Let's see. Patrick, have you joined yet? Vote for vote. Rick?
Yes.
Roxanne?
Yes.
Sherry Pickthorn? Sherry Gustafson?
Yes.
Oh, great. Thank you. There you are. Terrell? I think Terrell's planning to join in person and is not here yet. And Zania. Anyone miss? I'm sorry, go ahead. It's me. It's Lisa. Lisa, I'm sorry. Okay, Lisa. Yes, thank you. That was my fault. I had the other Lisa marked out as not attending and I skipped you over. I apologize.
I was like, we're on the M's. Wait a
Yes. Okay, anyone else maybe who joined who we hadn't called on for adoption of the minutes? All right, then we'll go ahead and move on. I think that should be the majority to adopt the minutes. We'll double check the count later and come back if there's any question with that. In the interest of time, excuse me, the remaining part on this slide and the next slide talks about the action items from the last meeting. I'm not going to go line by line. You all have the presentation and can review that so that we can continue to move forward. One note I wanted to let you all know is that there are action items from not only council meetings, but also the work group meetings that are additional information or data requests that the council has had. Want to let you know that PCG is working with DHS to know all of those and track them on a log to be able to provide responses back to you all. So our plan is to take the remaining new action items from the work group meetings in February and any new requests from this meeting, add those to the tracking log, get the responses finalized, and then send the responses with those to your information and data requests out to you all with the council minutes from this meeting. All right, well, I'd like to move us forward to charter updates and adoption. So last meeting, you spent some time really talking through some changes you wanted to the group's charter. So we have made those. I did send out the updated charter today. I apologize for not sending that out with everything else on Friday. I missed that one. But you all do have the most recent version of the charter now. If for some reason you don't have it, let me know. But there were 4 sections that we made some final changes to. One was the impact of your work. There we added that it would be financial stability for Minnesota's LTSS programs. The next section updated was responsibilities. We changed a couple of things from to add give everyone a chance to speak, and also added raise your hand to be called on to speak and say your name before you share. In the work groups and decision-making section, we changed the headings a little bit so it flowed better for the body of the section, added that members may choose to be on more than one group, and recommendations that receive a majority yes vote will be included in the final report. Lastly, added in the communication section that meetings will be reported from here on out. The large council meetings will be reported, and there will be public comment at those meetings as well. So I'll ask the council member, do you all have any questions or concerns or any other changes to the charter at this point? Well, then I'd like to move to a roll call vote for adoption of the charter. So similar to the minutes, we will run through the council members again. We'll call your name starting in alphabetical order by your first name to vote yes or no on adoption of the charter. So again, we'll start with Addison. Okay, we'll come back. Alex? Aye. Thank you. Allison? I don't think Allison's present. Anna?
Yes.
Thank you. Barb?
Yes.
Colin?
Yes.
Darla?
Yes.
Thank you. Jay? Okay. Genevieve?
So Michelle,
Yeah.
we got a yes from Addison in the chat.
Oh, thank you, Addison. Okay. And we'll come back to Jay. Jennifer?
Yes.
Yes, I did say yes. This is Jay. I said yes.
Okay, thank you, Jay. We didn't hear you. That's wonderful. Thank you. Let's see. Jillian? Okay, we'll come back. Lance?
Yes.
Thank you. Lisa? Yes, thank you. Thank you. And noting that Lisa Bella is not here. Let's see, Lori?
Yes.
Luella?
Yes.
Musab? So, okay, Nicole?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Patricia. Let's see, Patricia and Patrick. I don't know if Patrick's been able to join yet. Rick.
Yes. We also got Jillian said yes.
Thank you, Jillian. Roxanne?
Yes.
Thank you. Sherry Pickthorn.
Yes.
Thank you. Sherry Gustafson.
Yes.
Thank you. And Terrell is not in the room yet. I don't know if Terrell, are you online yet? 1:30. 1:30. Okay, she'll be here 1:30. All right. And Sonia.
Yes.
Thank you so much. All right, everyone. I think we are good. Anyone I missed? All right. Well, then we'll consider, I believe, the charter adopted. All right, that's putting us, I believe, maybe slightly ahead of schedule or maybe 2 minutes behind. I can't quite tell, but I think we're doing good. So the next section, I would like to turn it over to DHS, Colin, for comments on this section.
Great. Thanks, everybody, and thanks for being here today. We wanted to take a few minutes to kind of talk through how the council's work is going to intersect with the legislative session that began this week, and kind of how our work funnels into the 2027 legislative session too. So of course, the council's work is not happening in isolation. The legislature is going to be meeting over the next few months to consider bills. And some of those bills may also impact the council's work. So there might be overlap between what the work groups in the council and the council itself are talking through in terms of ideas and what the legislature may be adopting as laws as well. So just kind of in terms of how our work is going to intersect with their work, there could be bills that get passed this session that create savings in any of the in-scope long-term services and supports programs. If those ideas get passed this session, but the law doesn't explicitly say that it reduces the council's target, that means that option is off the table for us. We can't continue to explore that option since the legislature would have already implemented it and didn't touch the target. The alternative option is if the legislature adopts a savings measure and says, and that means the council's target is reduced by X number of dollars. That means that we have a lower target that we need to hit at the end of our work together. So that's something that we'll be watching, and we just wanted to bring up. The legislature will probably move pretty fast this year since it's a little bit of a shorter session. And by the time we're all together again in April, things may be a little different based on what they're considering. So just wanted to kind of explain the context of how bills they may consider could impact our work too. The second thing I was going to note was that a lot of folks here represent organizations that may be carrying bills themselves this legislative session. I mean, speaking from the DHS perspective, the governor's office is putting together their budget bill right now, and there might be initiatives that they ultimately choose that impact our work too. So just kind of acknowledging from our end, and I assume a lot of might be the case with a lot of you too, that you'll be working on legislation this session that may impact the council's work too. That's not to work around the council in any sense of the work, in any sense at all, but also just to note that this work isn't in complete isolation. There's current work happening on these programs in the legislature beyond our meetings as well. So just wanted to acknowledge that, share that we'll keep the council updated as things progress. And I think we also have a few hands.
Thank you. All right, so we have looks like 2 hands up, and I believe Jillian, your hand was up first, so go ahead.
I just wanted to offer a tool to be useful to the group. As part of my role as policy director of the Autism Society, I work with a really great piece of software called State Affairs. If the facilitator group keeps me apprised to what bills this group is watching in relation to our work here, I can actually set up a report to go out weekly with this current status of those bills, including changes, hearings. Like, I just need a list of email addresses and a list of bills, and my system automates it. Just so that we can all kind of stay apprised to what's happening legislatively that impacts this group. So if someone from whoever's in charge of keeping track of that this session wants to connect with me outside of this meeting, I'd be happy to help with that to make sure that we're all on the same page with that. And take some work off of your plate so you don't have to track quite as hard.
Thank you, Jillian. Any other questions or follow-ups to that, or?
Yeah, kind of as Jillian noted, follow up with her if that's something that you're interested in. Thanks for the offer, Jillian.
Thank you. Barb.
Thank you. And thanks, Jillian. I think that's a great idea and a nice offer. And thanks, Colin. I think you talked about it really well, because almost everyone here is active in other advocacy organizations, employed by organizations, et cetera, that are doing things at the legislature. And it sometimes feels a little bit like we're doing this work, but we're also doing work over here that is connected. So there's 6 of us from counties that were appointed from Minnesota County organizations. And we talked about this because we really want to be transparent with the group, because there's a lot going on in our arena that intersects with the council's work. So we actually wrote up a statement that I'm going to read, because maybe I'm not as eloquent as Colin today. So I'm going to read it, and then we can talk about it or answer any questions. So as the 6 members of the LTSS Advisory Council that are representing counties, it is our goal to be fully engaged with the council and to share and be transparent with all council members regarding actions that have been underway by the counties long prior to the start of this council. So within the realm of our legislative advocacy, counties, like many organizations, some of which are represented on this council, set legislative priorities, and we advocate for change. We've been working since early 2025 to propose strategies to this year, the 2026 legislature, specific to address the concerning and unsustainable cost trajectory for the LTSS services. This work began well before the 2025 legislature created the council. Actually, we were all proponents of getting the council created, so that we had some time to do this work. And we really do want to, continue to bring these recommendations forward here in the council, but some of them we are working on individually and have been for some time. So we just want you to be aware that we will be asking for any approved changes that provide savings, that those savings are applied to our LTSS Advisory Council's goal. We think that's really important, and we commit to that. And although by statute, the legislation says that the proposed cost share was to be split evenly between providers and counties, we're asking that anything that happens this session that counties are proposing and becomes law be applied to the total amount, so that it could equally reduce the burden for both counties and providers. So we want to assure you we're going to continue to bring all our ideas through the council process also, but our sense of urgency surrounding the timeline makes it so that we're still continuing this work outside of the council. So we understand that legislation and policy changes take time, and most ideas that we have and that the council has will also require approval from CMS. So we think we're in this for the long haul. So as proposals are developed, we'll place a high priority on evaluating and minimizing potential negative impacts on persons and their families and caregivers who receive these supports and services. We want access to high quality personalized supports at the right time and in the right way. And we feel that that's essential to helping people live independently and fully engage in their community. So finally, we really strive with the work we do within and outside the council that we need to strike a balance, focusing on access to services and support while maintaining that long-term sustainability. So speaking for the 6 of us who were appointed to represent counties, that's our statement, because it just felt a little weird not to say something when we're all working so hard right now on some of the same ideas that we're also working on in the council. So with that, if anybody has questions, we can try and answer them or discuss any of this.
Thank you, Barb. Any questions or comments from other council members? Zania?
Sorry, guys, I was struggling to come off mute. I do have a question. Just seeing as the counties have already been working on solutions, have those solutions or potential ideas been proposed to the council, and have there been fiscal notes kind of run on some of those? Or is that part of our meeting today?
You know, I'm going to let some of my colleagues jump in, but I do feel like almost every idea that counties have been and are working on also came up through the council, and the council might be prioritizing some of them different than us, but in all of these cases, we're gathering, I don't think it's quite to the point of fiscal notes yet, but gathering the data and the information from DHS. And I just would hope, if I'm not saying that exactly correctly, that my colleagues will jump in.
Alex?
That's right. Thanks, Barb. We've brought, like, for example, in the benefits work group, we brought forward the idea of TEFRA parental fees or cost shares. And that is something that the counties have also been looking at for well before this group. And I think most of them have come up in different spaces. It's just that counties also have, in our associations, have to move forward with some legislation. So you're absolutely right. Person who made the comment. We would want them both here and there. And yeah, the process to get the bill fiscal noted through DHS is a little different with this group versus when we bring it through the county thing. But all of us want the same data, so we should be trying to get that together. We have no intention of bringing something forward and not bringing it here, just maybe not the time frame and how they match up is really important.
Thank you, Alex. Thank you, Barb. Zania, anything else before we move on to Luella?
No, I guess that's all I have for right now until we get to other topics. Go ahead, Luella.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, my only comment was going to be that not all of them that have been yet introduced. Many have been, but because I think our work groups are kind of in the starting stages, and just talking about some ideas, not every idea has been brought in yet, I don't believe. That was the only comment I was going to make.
I guess my other question was, and maybe this is not the right time to ask it, but I was wondering if DHS actually had recommendations that had monetary amounts, and are those a part of the conversation as well?
Yeah, the DHS positions, we've proposed items in past governor's budgets. We will propose probably some new items in an upcoming governor's budget. And in terms of the DHS position, those are our positions. We're in kind of a funny place related to the council's work, in that we're technically here representing DHS as an organization, and then the governor's office. So we're eager to engage with you all on ideas through the council's work, but in terms of DHS positions, we're limited to the items that the governor's office puts forward themselves.
I do want to just say that I understand that piece, like DHS's position. I'm more talking about DHS's ideas, like what has come up internally, or where is that data as well? Like, are there actually ideas that we have not seen here, that are not, they don't necessarily have to be, I guess I'm not looking for the governor's budget right now. I'm just wondering if there's more we could, like, I'm sure there's insight you all have about the numbers and about some of these things that would be helpful to this council. And I just wanted to bring that up.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Like trends or, different things like that. And I know some of that is already here, but it'd be nice to highlight that so that we're not just kind of shooting in the dark here.
Yeah, thank you. It's this is kind of an unusual spot for us to be in, and we're going to need to get some advice from some of our folks on, what we can and can't share. Oftentimes, if we do have ideas, they're going to the governor's office for consideration, and if they aren't picked up, we really can't do much with them. So it's a difficult spot to be in, but I'm hopeful that some of the information we review today and continue reviewing over the next few meetings can get to some of those same conclusions too.
Thank you. Thanks, Colin. And we have that noted too, Zamia. If there's further follow-up to provide, we'll provide that. All right, we have about 2 minutes left on this topic. We actually are on schedule, which is good, slightly ahead. So I think we can move forward. I did want to pause to see, I know Lance, you posted in the chat that you agree with what Jillian stated, that it's going to be really important to figure out how to track the bills for coordination. Anything else you wanted to add?
No, I think that was it. I really appreciate the unity that we're talking about and making sure that we're all on the same page, because there's just so many moving parts to this.
Thank you, everyone. Well, now, unless there are any objections, I think we can move forward to the work group updates. So as a lot of you are aware, the 3 work groups have had 2 meetings now, trying to come together and coalesce around some information needs and cost savings ideas. So do I go to the next slide? Thank you. So for anyone who doesn't know, there's the eligibility group, the benefits group, and the provider rates work group. And again, these work groups are formed on these topics because these are the 3 main levers that a state agency has to look at how to control Medicaid spending. So we like to start with brief updates. We've got 30 minutes for this section, so that should be about 10 minutes per work group. So we'll keep an eye on that. But I think if we can start with the eligibility work group and those work group leads, Jay and Luella, would you like to share some updates with the larger group?
Sure. I don't know, Jay, if there are particular things you wanted to start out with. I know I've got a couple of things I can share.
Why don't you start, Luella?
Okay.
Yeah, please.
All right. Well, I guess kind of the main thing I wanted to share today with the group is that in the meetings that we've had so far, I'll say we haven't fully fleshed out any one idea yet. The way we've approached it is we have a number of ideas that subgroup members have thrown out. Last meeting, we did start to go through the initial list just to do kind of a sort of talk through, the ideas a little bit more and say, okay, is this one that we want to dig into a little bit further, or do we think, maybe it's a good idea, but maybe won't have the cost savings, or, something we're not as a work group going to spend our time on, so we can start to determine in our next work group meetings which ones we really start to dig into so that we have some ideas to bring forward to the council. So last meeting, there were a few and we had some robust discussion about very good ideas for a lot of different reasons, but we set them aside and said, okay, we're not going to work on these, and came up with a list of a few things. Like TEFRA came up in our work group too, which we understand there's kind of a couple of work groups that are actually interested in something like that, which was interesting to, that's a good thing to hear that kind of there are some of these ideas as we start to flush them out and bring them into the council that we will have some things that can move forward. I will also say that at the last meeting, we also then started another kind of a list of things that we can start to dig into. So I think for our next meeting, we'll really start to have a group of things where we have some data, because that was the other piece, bringing in some data pieces, because we do want to focus on those things that will give us some cost savings. I think we're a little mixed on how much of cost savings. There's some big impact things, there's some smaller impact things. So we haven't landed too much on how we'll go through those things, but I do think we're starting to come with a list of things that the group will, in our March meeting, really dig into a bit deeper. So I'll hand it to Jay for anything else you'd want to add.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. We're still waiting on some, some data, some numbers, so we can, I guess, have something to discuss. And that's probably where we are with most of the other groups also, is we're just going to continue to, wait, to get, uh, to get some more information so we can continue to discuss the, options that we're going to develop.
Thank you both very much. Before I move on to the next work group, I just want to pause because I think we've got things worked out in the chat about the public link. Are we all good now? Got the right things out there?
Yes, please. To all members who are sharing the link, please share the link that Jensina just shared. And that should work.
Brief reminder, the link that you get as council members to join is only for you. So if that's shared, that's why someone else wouldn't be able to join. Okay. All right, I think we're good. So thank you for that. Again, thank you, Jay and Luella, for that great update. Now moving on to the benefits work group. Alex and Addison, if you want to share updates. Addison, I don't know if you can tell, but Alex is in the room. Addison, you're online, so I don't know who wants to start first.
I can let Alex do it because was not in most of this last meeting because I was dealing with a situation. So she can give the update.
Yeah, happy to. Thanks, Addison. We were not dissimilar from our friends in eligibility. So we spent a fair amount of time just reviewing where we have information requests and needs and the status of the different information requests that we needed. Then we went through, we were trying to flesh out ideas that we had brought up that had been brought up from the group, mostly focused on like streamlining processes, streamlining service delivery, some different modification that we had a whole list that we were going through, also talking similarly to the other group about what makes sense to pursue, what maybe isn't the right time or the right fit for this group. And then we spent a lot of time on new ideas. There were lots of good ideas from the group that we documented so that we can, again, work towards getting a subsection of those. We also had some members who had done some work outside of this who sent, lists of ideas and costs, which were really helpful and I think will inform future meetings. But overall, we're still in the trying to go from lots and lots of ideas into ideas that make sense, have savings, and align with the values of this advisory council and the group overall of where we're trying to go. I don't know if I missed anything, Addison or anyone else. I know a couple people are on here too that are in the work group.
We got a question from Zania asking if someone could share that information, but we might need some more clarity about what specific.
Sorry, go ahead, Zania.
She mentioned that there was some type of cost data or some data someone brought forward. Can that information be shared?
I will ask that person to make sure. I don't want to share their information.
Is that Jay's?
Yeah, that was Jay's.
Oh, yeah, Sonia, sorry. I know, and Jay, I think you brought that up in all three work groups that you sit on.
Okay. I didn't know.
Yeah, and I apologize if I didn't clarify it in the notes. I did upload it to the SharePoint site.
Oh, great.
So the council's SharePoint site, it's in a couple of areas to try to make it easier. One is in resources, just general resources tab. And then because each of the work groups talked about it, I put it in the folder for the work group meeting minutes. If you can't find it, let me know. Either I could send it or I'm sure Jay, you'd be happy to send it too. Does that help?
Yeah, I can absolutely send that. If I have an email address, I'd be happy to get that out.
Thank you.
All right. Oh, and just a note here for anybody in the room, probably good to make sure like speak up too, just to make sure they can hear you on. We can hear everybody who's in the room online. And then Sonia, thank you. Jay, Sonia put her email in the chat. All right, Alex and Addison, anything else or benefits work group?
I don't think so.
Thanks.
Thanks, Addison. Sorry. Provider rates work group, Lori and Darla.
Yeah, I'm like, Darla, do you have a preference about calling anything out? Otherwise, I'm happy to get things started and you can jump in with anything I missed. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and jump into it. I think our experience, it really, as I'm hearing from the leads of the other groups, it was really similar. It was really our first meeting digging into that, and a lot of what we focused on is some of the core information that we feel we need to be able to start really generating and vetting some ideas thoroughly. I'm really pleased that two of the top things that we were still waiting on at the time that our work group met was some more information about the competitive workforce factor and just exactly what that means in terms of impact towards the total, and also some of the spending by service category. And as I was reviewing the presentation for our meeting today, I see we're going to be covering a lot of that. So I think it'll be really helpful. There was generally, I think I'll describe just the theme of the work group is a lot of providers and county staff who are taking this charge very seriously, and also really keeping an eye on a calendar that's going to move very quickly. There is, I've got to say, I really appreciate the counties coming forward with that level of transparency and collaboration, because I think another big worry is that there will be ideas that we're fleshing out in this group, but if it doesn't pass through the legislature with that statement on it, it's not going to help us hit our mission. So the more we can be aligned on that, the better it will go. I'll give you an example of some of the ideas we did talk about. We talked a lot about looking at the CFSS and PCA models and differences in costs for providing those services, and wanting to dive into that. Now, Jay, just because you're showing up on my my screen and you're in deep in this world, definitely chime in with more context around that. But we did spend quite a bit of time.
Yes. Repeat that, Lori, please.
Oh, yeah, we did. We spent a lot of time talking about the two different home care home care services, CFSS and PCA, and how there are different cost drivers in those programs. And are we really looking and making sure that people are accessing the program that is appropriate for meeting their needs?
Yeah, you defined it. You said it.
Okay.
That's accurate.
All right.
I'm on, for those of you, I'm on all three committees. So
yeah. So if you need a clarification, it's a safe bet to pick on Jay, is where it comes down to. We also, one of the things we talked about, it's a very small impact. You know, I'm representing our day in employment trade association and providers, and there is a very nuanced project that we've been working on with DEED to open back up some access to long-term community employment, independent employment supports via the extended employment program. There's an amount of unspent dollars every year that are distributed under the current rule, distributed back to providers.
For the long-term services and supports meeting, it said 2230.
Oh,
okay.
Carol, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry, Carol, do you mind going on mute, please?
She asking what room we're in.
Oh,
Sorry about that. I actually thought I was on mute. I'll be upstairs in a minute.
Okay,
Okay, so anyway, it's just an example of a program, thinking of a non-waivered program that we're underutilizing. And we may have the ability to shift some of those waivered community supports back to that program and capture some savings there. Let's see. And Jay also, I think we covered this, had started doing some work for us to look at, what would it amount to if just every provider took a 1%, a 1.5% cut, and would that be something acceptable? How would it impact the different groups? And we came up with a long list of data requests that we definitely piled on and assigned to our friends at PCG and DHS. And I'm happy to see one of those was also some more information about what other states are doing so we can benchmark ourselves. And I saw that report was included in our materials for this meeting too. So I think others, Zania and Anne, I know you were on that call too, that we missed.
I think you did a good job.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you very much. Lori, good updates. All right. Well, you all were very efficient with those updates, which is great. We are continuing a little ahead of schedule, which is wonderful. Any other comments or questions on the work groups before we move into the discussion around the competitive workforce factor and county share? Well, then I think we can forward. I was trying to advance my screen. I'm not sharing my screen. That's funny. Okay. So the competitive workforce factor and county share, and for those of you, when you've heard online, Terrell is now joining us in the room. So welcome, Terrell. Thank you. You all have expressed in the full group and work groups that you would like a little bit more information on really kind of what the implications of the contingent spending reductions listed in the legislation are to help better inform your discussions for cost savings ideas. So next slide. Briefly, I think you all are aware, here's the background, is a link in the actual slide deck to the legislation if you need to refer to it. But two of those contingent reductions are listed here as they are in the legislation. So wanted to start today, we have about a good 20-ish minutes to be on the safe side for this agenda item. So the first one, I think, that is the council wanting to understand a little bit better what the competitive wage factor, competitive wage workforce factor, that there was a typo, thank you, competitive workforce factor will actually mean. And I know we've had a little bit of discussion about this, but wanted to have a little bit more today. So starting here, I think, DHS, do you have a little bit more to share in terms of this particular contingency?
Yeah, so the competitive workforce factor is a component within the rate algorithms for the disability waiver rate system services. So this includes spending for it includes most of the spending in disability waiver services, but it's not all disability waiver services. There are some services like home delivered meals, for instance. That's just a set rate. It doesn't include the competitive workforce factor. So it's a component within a rate calculation. Obviously, a reduction in that component would reduce the overall rate itself. However, we don't know exactly what that percentage decrease would be at this point. It's 49.48% of the savings would need to be achieved there, which comes to about $88 million. But in terms of what that factor would be after that calculation, is kind of a function of how many people are receiving these services at that point, what we're spending on those services at that point. And a lot of that would be informed by what the state budget forecast is saying about those services when that determination would need to be made. So we know what the overall dollar figure is, but we don't necessarily know what that exact percent reduction in this rate component would be yet.
Any comments or questions before we move on to county share? Rick?
Does the competitive workforce factor, is it an equal part of the various listed services, adult day, community resident day support services? And what I'm getting at is if the competitive workforce factors say cut by 10%, does the overall rate for each of these get cut equally by like 10%? Or is it like, because labor is so much more important to some of them, it's a much bigger cut for some programs and a smaller cut for other programs?
That's a good point. It's not even. It's the same adjustment factor across all of the services, but so how it adjusts the rate is it adjusts the wage component in the rate. And the wages are different in all of these rates. So kind of the impact dollar figure would be different across these different rates. There are also some services where, for instance, community residential services, which has a lot of staffing built into it. Those staffing factors use those wage codes that are enhanced by the competitive workforce factor. So from a dollar perspective, it may be a bigger chunk out of those, like you said, labor intensive services than the other services.
And just one quick follow-up. Obviously the competitive workforce factor is sort of theoretically designed to fund labor costs. Is there any sort of mechanism that guarantees the pass through, or it's sort of just, market competition that,
Yeah, the rate frameworks or algorithms make assumptions about what those costs are, but ultimately at the end of the day, it's up to the providers to determine, what gets paid.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. Okay, we have a couple hands. Excuse me, raised online. Zania?
Thank you. I just have a question. Will we have that data at some point, like within the next meeting, or is that just data we won't be able to get? Because I think what we talked about in our group is if 49% of it would be, adjusting the CWF, and it results to like $20 or, so we could have a gauge so we would know what the real impact is. So I'm just wondering, when will we have that information? Or is it possible? I understand you don't have it now, but like, how could we get that information?
Right. So, like I was noting, it's going to be a analysis that's performed between DHS and MMB based on the most recent February forecast, or probably the February forecast, depending on, if the council meets its goal and the legislature passes sufficient savings to avoid these contingent reductions. So unfortunately, that would be the likely February 2027 forecast about what that would be. Let me connect with some of our folks in DHS to see if we could kind of run a simulation. And we definitely can't guarantee this is absolutely what that result would be, but I can check to see if we could use current data to kind of get a general idea about approximately what that would be. So let me take that back and we can get back to the council.
Okay, that would be really helpful. And I guess my other follow-up question to that is, does DHS have data on what other states have done? Because I did see that other states have had this issue as well, and they implemented different things. So just to kind of save us all time, if DHS already has that information, and has ideas on what other states have done. And then how that could be helpful here, how it, maybe it wouldn't. Or if it's, a rate decrease across the board in all services of certain percentage. I just think we need some ideas and some simulation here. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Let's see. Was there another hand up?
There was, but I guess.
Yeah.
Change your mind.
I had my hand up, but my question was going to be if we could do some rough modeling, as Colin was just suggesting. So great minds think alike, apparently. And I think it's okay to just back up what Zani has been saying. I think it's okay if it's not numerically detailed and correct, but to give us just some kind of directional ballpark of what kind of impacts we might be looking at, and that's where I think we're in a unique position, not being able to give orders to MMB on running analysis and fiscal notes, right? But we can't do that information. We can't calculate that and do that analysis ourselves.
All right, thank you. Well, I think now we can move on to the next slide, which is the county share. And I believe when the updates from the county maybe coincided a little bit with providing a little bit more information on this, but this is the savings must be met by imposing a county share for those services that are listed on the slide, because there's no county share applied to these services. DHS, or do you have something on this one?
Yeah, so, backing into that target too, this would be about 89.5 million of what we would need to hit. And similarly to what we were just talking about with the competitive workforce factor, kind of exactly what the share would be that would be implemented would really be depending on how much we're spending on these services at that point too. So I would be open if folks would be interested to get an idea about what that value would be for these services, or if we're not interested in going there on these ones and don't necessarily want to do that analysis.
Alex?
Well, when this came forward as a bill, so outside of this last session, so there's a fair amount of information. I'm trying to grab it quickly of like the impact to individual counties specifically. So for Ramsey County, our impact was going to be in the neighborhood of like 2 to 3% on our levy, which is about $11 million. That's a round number. Don't quote me in public on that. But a round number around that 2 to 3% on our levy, which is a big deal for us. Other counties, particularly smaller counties, had a much bigger impact, in upwards of 10 to 20% for this. In a lot of the discussion that happened around this, and that's part of the reason to go back to the discussion earlier, that we had this group of counties together trying to find alternatives, because that is a major issue for all of us and taxpayers across the state of Minnesota. But lots of that was unsustainable for various counties, and we don't have a lot of ability to control the costs on that side to reduce. Like often when you see a county share or share for someone, you have some ability to change behavior so that there's an incentive there to change the behavior to reduce the cost share. Counties don't believe that we have that in this particular case. So we also did quite a bit of work around that, and both AMC and Max, I think, have some documents from last session, which would need to be updated based on our now levies, but would be pretty relevant. I can look for that. Sorry to talk about.
Yeah, no, and in both cases, both with rates and with this, there'd be no bending of the cost curve, right? So we should be clear about that. And then part of what's hard whenever anybody talks about county share, some of the discussion makes it sound like there's magical money somewhere. And there isn't any, and that is the biggest problem with it. So if Alex is able to pull that information, otherwise we can get it to you. The and is, we were also, a bunch more costs were already shifted, right? Like people are already worried. This year was the highest property tax increases in a long time. Next year is going to be much harder unless the state starts paying for some of the things they're requiring. So without any changes, I'm really worried about what would happen, not just on the property tax side, but what kind of services are people realistically going to be able to get across the board?
Thank you. And for folks online, that was Carol, and I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, I forgot to say, Carol Clark, Stearns County, AMC, Greater Minnesota County Commissioner rep.
Thank you. And I didn't, you were in my blind spot, so I didn't see your hand raised. Okay, thank you for that. We have a couple more questions online first. First Barb, then Jay. So Barb.
Thank you. I just want to say two things. One is, even though it's just like it says on this slide, there is no county share applied to these services. That doesn't mean that counties aren't having costs due to these programs. We still have administrative costs and other things that the counties are responsible for. So I think it sounds a little bit like, oh, we just don't want to pay for any of this. We are paying something. We're just not paying a county share. And then second, from the county perspective, we talk about taxpayers a lot, and it sounds like when I hear that, I get a little callous. But I think we have to remember that at some point we can't raise taxes anymore because we're taxing some people into services, and then we're cutting really important other things. So it's a little more nuanced than just. I just I felt like I need to say that because I think sometimes when we talk about it and we're so used to talking about it, it can sound a little bit like we're just trying to save rich fat cats money, but that's not it. It's a much bigger picture that really impacts all kinds of people. So I think there's lots of options out there. I just wanted to provide that context from my perspective. Thank you.
Thanks, Barb. Jay?
I think this is something that we've talked about in all three groups and as a group in whole. You know, our charter is to do no harm. And part of that is coming up with, you know, with solutions that how do we know what the solutions that we're coming up with is something that the legislature is going to adopt? But what we're trying to do is develop a program so that we don't have to come back here in 3 or 4 years and do this again. So, you know, cutting costs and you know and decreasing rates isn't the answer. It's got to come. It's got to get cleaned up. It's got to come through cleaning up the system and making the system run smoother and more effective. And it comes through, you know, getting rid of some of the fraud, you know, waste and abuse, and you know, streamlining it through technology. Nonetheless, we don't want to be, you know, we don't want to have to come back to this program and do this in you know 3 or 4 more years. So you know, just cutting rates isn't the answer, because we can do that all day long and people will be without services and we'll be back here trying to find new ways to do things.
Thank you, Jay. And Rick in the room?
Yeah, I had a question probably for the counties. I understand the ability, if the county share goes up, the ability of any given county to bear that is going to sort of vary depending on their underlying financial situation. But is there much variation? And if there is, sort of what's the pattern in the amount of services that counties provide for these 4 services? Some do a lot more of it than others. I'm just trying to gauge, like, are there some counties that are much more impacted by this and some counties that are less impacted by this? In terms of, not so much in terms of their ability to cover the cost, but just in terms of the fiscal impact because of the level of services that they provide.
I first just wanted to mention again, other people know more than I do on the county. I think counties are we're pretty regulated by the state for what we have to do. It's fairly consistent. But the county share would be brand new. It's not like adding. We don't have a county share on these services right now. We do pay part of it, but I just wanted to be clear on that. So that's brand new.
Oh, also, Barb had her hand up first and then come back to you, Jess.
That's good. She might answer.
Barb?
I think that's a really great question, and there's probably all kinds of ways to answer it. But on a very simple level, across the state of Minnesota, there's some very big differentials in percentages of the population that are using these services. And really in some of our very smaller counties, the percentage of folks, especially because the aging population, it can be really high. So even though we're so regulated about what we have to provide if people meet and are eligible for these benefits, which they should get all that same thing, some counties have such a higher percentage of folks being eligible and needing those services, and way less people who are paying those taxes that pay that bill. And unfortunately, it tends to be that some of those very small counties also, the wages and socioeconomic status of those families who don't need the services is a lot lower. So the tax burden can be very high. So I think just on a simple level, it's that type of thing that we're worried about, and that even if counties are made to do this, the system could just implode, actually. Like, they might not be able to. It just might not happen because they can't meet all the regulations, and we just don't want that to happen.
Thank you. We have two more people. Terrell, do you have something to add to that? And then Anna and Addison will come back to you.
And maybe it's a slightly different way of saying the first part of what Barb said is that these are state services, right? The statute has, to the extent statutes change, it's generally been about more opportunities, more services, and the state has been willing to pay for it. Now the state is saying something's got to give. Here's our idea legislatively, as you all know, Rick, how challenging that can be, right? So this was their way, this is their stick, really. And back to what Jay had said, I think we've all agreed we want to try to minimize harm. And I think one of the things we found is that understandably, so many folks are being able to access so many services. And even when no is set one place, yes is set at the next place, or no is set at the next place. Yeah, I mean, it's hard. So now, to me, the biggest challenge with this is if we start even thinking about, can we even need any of this, then we're not going to do our real hard work, which is about how do we come up with some ways to minimize negative consequences. Indeed, can we actually figure out a good way to enhance them to make it easier?
Thank you, Terrell. Anna.
Yeah, I mean, I think it will be helpful going back to the data pieces, running a mock-up of really what does this actually mean in dollars or percentages, I think would be helpful. Seeing the county data would be helpful since that's already out there. But I guess the way that I'm looking at this group is I don't want to do either of these things, right? I want us to come up with different solutions so that we don't have to do this, right? Moving to a county share is super complicated. It doesn't actually change the cost of the service. You're taking money out of one pocket instead of the other. And with the other one, you're again just reducing what you're paying for the service, but you're expecting the service to be the same. So I think there are a lot of issues with both of these methods. And I guess I'm hoping that we can focus our time on finding other solutions so that we don't have to get to this.
Thank you, Anna. Addison?
So coming from the parent side and the waiver recipient side, or service recipient side, I will say there are huge variations between counties in regards to what services are provided and their interpretations of state or of like the CBSM and stuff like that. And so that already I will say is like a huge issue. And I think if we go to cost sharing, that's going to be even more of an issue, which as it is half of the time, like at least down in Goodhue County where I am, everything is already a fight to be able to get any services, and they just deny everything when they really have no grounds to be denying it. And so I fully agree that like that's, if we go that route, it's going to be it's going to very severely negatively affect those of us, especially in the smaller counties where they already play by their own rules.
All right. Oh, I see another hand up here. It is, oh, thank you, Jillian.
I think this brings back something that I don't know if I've actually said it in this group or if I just say it everywhere else. Um, there is no consequences to counties or case management agencies for poor management of disability services. Or like Addison was just talking about how like they just willy-nilly deny things. Like we see this all the time with both counties and case managers. And then those things go on to cost more money. I have sat through so many disability hearings and disability hearings. Like those judges, they're not there on volunteer time. The paralegals prepping for it aren't there on volunteer time. And I think if we had some level of accountability for those who hold power in the disability services, so case managers in counties, and to be completely honest, maybe something that fiscally holds them responsible for things, that we would see a reduction in poor decisions and we would see an increase in training to make sure case managers in counties were actually making right decisions because there would be a reason for it. So I truly believe that if we start holding people accountable for bad decision making that impacts people with disabilities, that we are going to see a cost savings because a lot of times those bad decisions lead to crisis interventions, which costs a lot more money. They lead to appeals, which cost a lot more money. They lead to more expensive interventions that cost a lot more money versus just getting something covered. Like I'll use my iPad, for example. I live with chronic pain and chronic illness, and in a technology first state, I requested an iPad to control my household items that are my smart home, to be able to work from my bed when facing a lot of pain, to be able to attend meetings and medical appointments without having to sit up when I'm dealing with pain. And this was denied for weeks, and it almost had to go to an appeal. It would have cost thousands of dollars more for an item that cost under $1,500 if that had to go to appeal. And the only reason my item did not go to appeal and did not get denied was because Senator John Hoffman stepped in. But how many of those denials are happening every single month where Senator John Hoffman isn't stepping in? And then it goes to appeal, and it's costing our state that much more money. So I really think there needs to, especially if we're looking at implications in county shares, we need to make sure that there is a consequence system for everyone involved that is in power making decisions to make sure that the decisions being made are responsible and that we are holding them accountable for making the right decision the first time.
Thank you, Jillian.
This is Jillian.
Oh, yes. Thank you, Jillian. Addison.
This is Addison again. So just to like bounce off what Jillian is saying and to give another example of I have spent I am on day, I think 60 something of hospitalizations this year with 30 plus ER visits, and yet our county is still denying um nursing services and the appropriate level of care. And so it will end up having to go to an appeal and then with like our min choice assessment where we are, like our county case managers are the ones who also do our min choice assessments in Goodhue County. And so they're getting to arbitrarily make up their rules, decide how to answer things on the min choice assessments. And so all of it, that cost is going to start building up. And so from a state standpoint, despite there being despite the law and the rules being that every county is supposed to be following the same guidelines until we hold these counties accountable and until there's some kind of consequence, like Jillian said, where it's going to cost people more and more money because I can guarantee it's a lot more expensive for them to keep me in the hospital and me repeatedly end up in the ER than it would be for them to provide the services and supports that are needed.
Okay, great job, everyone, on good discussions and moving the agenda forward. So we're about 8 minutes from break. We can move into break and sign up for public comment. We can still have the full break time, so we don't have to cut that short. I think it's important to stay on our time frame, especially since that's what's posted publicly, so people know what we'll be covering. But in the final minutes here, any other comments on what we've just been discussing or anything sort of the first half of this meeting before we talk about public comment, sign up and move to break? All right. Well, then as we move into break here, I'd like to invite people who are participating in the changes. I can't talk and press buttons at the same time. But for folks who are joining us from the public virtually, if you would like to provide public comment at the end of the meeting, which occurs between 4 to 4:30, it'll be sort of a first sign up, and then we'll call on you during that period. Please put your name in the chat. I just enabled the chat for the general public, so you can put your name and organization if applicable in the chat. We'll consider that sign up, and we'll come back to you at the end of the meeting for public comment. And we don't have any general public in the room for comment, but somebody comes, we can let them know that as well. So with that, we'll have through the break to do the sign up, and then council members, feel free to turn off cameras, take a break, and we will come back at 2:40 p.m. Thanks, everyone. Okay, checking in before we move to the next item on the agenda. I am not seeing anyone sign up in the chat to provide public comment. So I guess what we can do is we can check in again as we wrap up the meeting just to make sure we didn't miss anybody. We'll check in then to see if there's anybody else who wants to sign up. So maybe if that's okay, Colin, maybe I'll just leave it open a little longer in case that was missed or something. With that, then we're excited to jump back into the rest of this meeting today. I have some information to share with you all. A lot of it has been requested by council members. So to start with, my colleague Sarah Harrigan is going to lead the discussion and presentation on national trends in LTSS cost savings report. The report was attached for you to review. So the information today Sarah's going to provide is an overview. So Sarah, I'll turn it over to you.
Great, thanks, Michelle. And there's a number of folks on the call who supported the research in this report. So please, if questions come up and my colleagues please feel free to join in answering the question. Just said to right? No, you can use that. Oh, right. Thank you. All right. So the goal here is to give you all a general overview in how other states are dealing with the challenges of LTSS cost growth. This is fairly high level. I will share that the report that was provided as an attachment has a lot of references in it that might give you some additional, more specific details. So I'm going to run through these slides at a relatively high level, and we can pause for questions at the end if that's all right with folks. All right, so first and foremost, Minnesota is certainly not alone. Almost every state is facing a rise in LTSS volume and costs, and most states are looking at a number of different strategies to help flatten the cost curve for LTSS. Some of these strategies, many of these we've already discussed as a group for better or worse, but across the board nationwide, states are looking at leveraging technology. They're looking at value-based payments, either with or without Medicaid managed care. Medicaid managed care, not seeing a huge increase in states moving from fully fee-for-service to Medicaid managed care, but certainly growth and different changes within leveraging managed care payments to help reduce that cost curve. And then these last three on here are pretty common ways that states are looking at reducing their LTSS costs. The county cost share, which we've already talked about a lot today, spending caps, and rate decreases across the board, provider rate decreases. So the goal here again is not to provide specific recommendations or suggestions, but to provide more of an overview on what other states are looking at and working through. Slide, please. So populations that are needing LTSS are growing across the board. Many states are experiencing this, like Minnesota. There is a well-documented growth in the aging population, but there's also an across-the-board growth in disability waivers. So individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities, more folks seeking services, receiving services. And then another area that is really part of the cost growth is that states across the board are experiencing participants with increasingly complex medical and behavioral health needs, which are increasing the cost of LTSS services. Adding to this, states are challenged in a lot of their home and community-based services. I will reference this as HCBS. So that acronym is Home and Community-Based Services, traditionally much less expensive than institutional care, but is getting increasingly challenging to provide that support, both because of staffing shortages. This is folks across the country are experiencing this, and also increase in housing costs are making those access to home and community-based services even more challenging. The next slide, please. Thank you. The federal recommendations on reducing the cost curve have really focused on rebalancing. So over the HCBS services have been around for available through a federal waiver for the last 35 years. States have been working to rebalance their population, so moving folks away from institutional care for the past 3.5 decades. The Centers for Medicaid and Medicare Services, the federal agency that oversees Medicaid, really recommends this rebalancing as a primary way to maintain or improve outcomes while balancing the cost. Minnesota is one of the states that really leads the way in LTSS rebalancing. So I'm going to share actually the next slide, which gives you a national overview here. What this slide depicts is states across the country and how they do on the specific metric, which is what percentage of their overall LTSS spending is on HCBS services. For Minnesota, it is 84%. The national average is 64.1%. And you can see this slide shows the darker states here, including Minnesota, Wisconsin, Colorado, New York, Missouri are closer states. These are the states that are in the third quartile, which really have the highest percentage of overall spending is in HCBS. What this says for the council is that rebalancing alone is not going to get the council where it needs to be in terms of cost savings. Minnesota's already done great work and is really a leader. States across the country look to Minnesota on how to make sure that they are expanding their HCBS services. All right, so that leads to some other higher level strategies. We'll go to the next slide. Some states, increasingly so, are really focusing.
Can I just interrupt for a moment? It looks like there's a couple questions about that previous slide.
Yes, Jillian, I was just going to put in the chat. What we're going to do is please hold your questions. They're very important. We'll come back to them. Sarah's going to cover her slides and then we will have time for questions. So thank you. We're just not ignoring you. Okay. Or you can put them in the chat if you want to remember them, but we'll open it up for questions as soon as Sarah's done with the slides. Minnesota is a technology first state. There's a number of technology first states. That means that the state's official policy is to consider technology supports before traditional staffing models or in
in a coordination with traditional staffing models when authorizing services for individuals receiving LTSS services. Remote supports is specifically a growing service area which allows participants to connect directly with remote support professionals in like a virtual office. They can provide real-time assistance without being physically present. The lead state in this example is Ohio. There's a few other states that are really going all in on remote supports and leveraging technology. The Ohio example, Ohio does have a technology first task force. It incorporates representatives from all of the state agencies that are impacted by long-term services and supports. And they do have state level metrics that they're trying to reach in terms of helping individuals access technology. I'm going to go on to the next strategy, which is value-based payments. So value-based payments are a shift in the way payments are focused away from paying for a specific service, which is called a fee-for-service model. You provide 15 minutes of PCA services, you get a specific rate. It moves away from that paying for a specific service to paying for an outcome. And this can be done in a number of different ways, one of which is through managed care. But also for really more specific services. This is gaining a lot of traction. Minnesota does a lot of value-based payments already. The example on this one on how it can be a cost savings, the work was really done at the national Medicare level, and there was a expansion of a home health value-based purchasing model that resulted in over $1 billion in savings in Medicare spending over a 5-year period. So that is a study that was put out with support of CMS that is really providing a model for value-based purchasing for home care. Next slide is managed care. This is, and Minnesota does have managed care for some of LTSS, although not disability services. That's my understanding is correct there, Colin. Perfect. Okay. So in managed care, this is a way that a number of states have worked to control costs by paying a managed care plan or managed care organization a fixed monthly amount per person, and then that managed per month. Then that managed care plan is responsible for meeting all of their long-term services. This is in and of itself a form of value-based payment. This has definitely provides states with budget predictability. It can lead to savings. It is worth a 3-hour meeting in and of itself. But at a high level, certainly within Medicaid managed care, there is a lot that states can do around value-based payments and really supporting the positive outcomes in managed care. Now, the caveat to this is that there is a very recent federal rule change that restricts the direction that states can give to managed care organizations. So that is still working. It's still yet to be seen how much that will actually impact states' abilities to set up their managed care organizations in a way that really drives value and reducing costs. A few more high-level strategies. County share is something that I didn't want to spend too much time on this slide because I think it was very well addressed earlier in this meeting. This is for LTSS. There is a very limited county share model for Minnesota right now for some institutional payments. Some states really rely on this strategy, New York State being a leader in the share that they expect from their counties. And I raise this because it is a strategy that lots of states are taking another look at with the increasing cost of LTSS and the reduction in Medicaid budgets.
Can I ask you a clarifying? Sorry, I'll wait till the end. I do have a clarifying question.
Okay, great. New Hampshire is this year looking to increase their county share as an example. Arizona is another example where the counties, this one was included because it's a little bit different. Counties contribute a varying portion based on a formula that does take into account utilization rates and property values. And also Arizona also has a large tribal population, so that is taken into account in their model as well. Just a couple more slides and then we will have time to go back and have questions. Spending caps. So this is, I think, the most frequently leveraged strategy to reduce funding with a second only to provider rate cuts. And is being looked at quite a bit across the country right now. All states already have some kind of HCBS spending cuts, spending caps. You can either cap the number of individuals enrolled in the waiver, or you can cap specific spending limits for individuals in the waiver. There's a few different ways you can do this. But in this fiscal year 26, quite a few states are looking, over 20 states are looking at implementing new types of waiver spending caps to control costs. And then the last strategy is across the board provider rate reductions, which again can look a little bit different. And I'll roll through these again because I know Jay had raised the question and is looking for this simulation on what a 1% provider rate cut could look like. There's certainly examples of states doing similar, taking similar strategies. So in Colorado, last year they had a 1.5% across the board provider rates increase. Oh, sorry, there was an increase and then they rolled that back. Thank you. In Rhode Island, historically, there was a nursing home rate increase that was at like an annual COLA increase, cost of living increase. Last year, they tied that increase directly to state revenue growth, which effectively eliminated the increase in years of low state revenue growth. Idaho recently had an across-the-board reduction of 4%. And North Carolina has been pursuing rate reductions, but is currently stalled in legal action. So this is, as I think you all know, working in this field, a way that legislators will often take action because it is relatively a simpler way to reduce that cost. Okay, I know we've got lots of questions, so thanks for letting me roll through that high level.
Thank you, Sarah. We're going to do 5 minutes for questions because we're already at time for this agenda item. And I want to make, no, it's fine. It's a good topic and it'd be good questions. So we'll do 5 minutes for questions and then we'll move into financial analysis. If we don't fully get to your question or comment, please put it in the chat and we'll note it and come back if we can, or come back in another format. Okay, or you can always email us separately too. So Juliet.
So we looked at the slide that had the map of the United States and the percentage of LTSS spending that goes into home and community-based services. Do we have data to support that chart for which states are still utilizing institutionalization?
for developmental disability population?
Yes.
So
I mean,
think-
obviously, you're going to have higher home and community-based service rates in states that aren't utilizing institutionalization.
that are fully deinstitutionalized. Yeah, I think, you know, the data that goes into that is all available through the Medicaid and CHIP scorecard, which is linked in the document. I do, yeah, I can't tie this directly to states that are still have not fully deinstitutionalized, but certainly that is reflected in the expenditures.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jillian. Jay? Oh, change your mind. Yeah. And then I think Carol, you'll email. Did you want? Okay.
Or do you want to ask? Well, okay, New York, it says all Medicaid, so I'm guessing that's broader, that percent is for everything in our state, touch other things, right? So.
Which slide?
It's the one with the county.
The 8%.
County cost share, and then almost all of those are not states that counties administer human services in, but New York is one of them. So if there are just a few things I'm just trying to figure it out. It's kind of weird, you know, New Hampshire has a gazillion little jurisdictions and Arizona has 15. And so yeah, just kind of as you're kind of thinking those apples to apples, I know it gets complicated, but this is really interesting. So I may just follow up with you with a couple of it.
It is like almost impossible to do apples.
Right, it's like apples to turnips in a way.
Yeah.
Right. But really appreciate the effort to pull it. So thank
Yeah,
you.
there is a good link. One of our colleagues did find some, I think, interesting information on the county that is linked in here. So you might find that.
Yeah,
interesting.
go look and
Yeah.
know that there's some other things like in the child protection areas where you know, it's like one of the highest cost states to counties, right? So almost like you have to kind of look at the whole before you go. And as Jay said earlier, I know we all want to keep repeating it. We're trying to figure out like how do we do the least harm while we're also enhancing things. And
Yes. Okay, cool. Thank you.
A couple minutes. Rick has a question.
It's less a question than maybe a data request, because I don't think anybody's gonna know the answer right now, but I was just, and this is Rick Barco from SEIU. On slide 27, I was interested in the reference to housing costs. In the sort of covered programs, if somebody could give me sort of a decent estimate of how much we're spending on housing costs, and preferably if you can get it broken down by how much is paid, I guess, to individuals or clients for them to sort of subsidize their rent or their housing cost, and how much is paid to providers, either as part of the rate or as explicitly to cover. And I guess I'd be interested in a sub breakdown within that between them going out and I guess on the market and renting an apartment for someone or buying housing for someone, and how much is to them for housing that they essentially own or control.
Thank you for that. We'll take that back and review.
Yeah, I do. One initial comment, certainly we can look into whether there is data for that. The way that the report is written in referencing the housing costs is more of a barrier for individuals staying in their homes rather than a cost driver for states specifically, because the way that LTSS is set up, that there is you are not allowed to directly pay for room and board.
Okay.
So that is a cost that is cut
If
out.
the answer is minimal to non-existent, don't worry about it.
We can take it back and discuss, but just wanted to clarify that it was more about an individual barrier to be able to find housing.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We have one more minute. So Anne, I see your hand up, and then we'll move to financial analysis.
Yeah, I know we don't have a lot of time to discuss any of these concepts. I'm assuming that we'll go to some of the subgroups. I would just ask that, you know, with any of the subgroups that are discussing any of these as options, that we take into consideration the timing. We've been working on Waiver Reimagine for a lot of years without successfully getting to the end of that. And so, you know, the savings target that we have for this group is a very specific time period. And with nothing changing out of this recommendation until the middle of 2027 as the starting point, I mean, some of these things, even if we decided we would find savings, I'm not sure it would hit the timing target. So just asking that all the subgroups keep that in mind as they consider what's worth spending more time on in this particular committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna, for making that point. All right, thank you everyone for your comments. Sarah, thank you for that, and the team who provided this report. So now we will move on to trends and cost drivers for Minnesota LTSS spending. So my colleague Jeremy will be presenting.
Hi, everybody. Thank you all for having us today. I'm really excited to speak about these data. I did want to make sure I note a little bit of thanks to DHS. DHS keeps really useful and transparent data comparatively to other states. I've worked in over 20. And so I've grown intimate with many, many, many different sets of data. And this one was pretty awesome. So it was great to have that. I did want to maintain a little bit of structure. So similarly to Sarah's talk, we're going to have specific placements where we're going to take some breaks. At these breaks, for the purpose of this conversation, one of the things, I mean, the work groups are about ideas primarily, but I'd like to ask if you have any insights on what is interesting about these data as the first question I'm going to ask, and then what savings ideas does this inform? If it directs you away from or towards any ideas, we'd like to document them. So we'll cover those over breaks, but essentially we're going to start zoomed out. We're going to talk about lots of the really high level data, and then we're going to slowly zoom in towards those smaller pieces so you can get a handle on which components are at what level. I think it's really helpful also to frame it that way so that we can understand once we get down towards those last few slides, you're already kind of aware that this is going to be in those very, very low budget elements. So to that regard, we'll use this to go through the conversation. Look at the first one. All right, so here is the monthly spend over time. The reason I look at this, the next slide will cover some totals and we'll discuss that here in a moment. But what this allows us to do is see the trends within the data. I really like to look at seasonality particularly and find seasonality to be a really helpful and informative metric in when thinking about trends in data. So you see it as it continues to go up. I would caution you with these data on those last few points, it looks like it moderates, but the data are lagged. So that moderation could be there, could not be there. So I always want to make sure I'm really clear that that piece isn't to be taken too terribly seriously. But overall, we see a significant increase. And we do want to mention that in those final years, we reached $800 million a month. So really, really big pool. Let's go to the next slide. So this one shows us the same data, just with a little different format, primarily focused on the total spend within a given year. So what you see here is fiscal year 21 through 25. All the data we're going to talk about today are in this frame. So, and we'll do a lot of comparison of fiscal 21 to 25, given that that's, you know, the more recent kind of reality situation. And also helps us think about those most recent years as well when we get into that. But essentially the point being here, when you look at that total spend increasing, it actually increases in that percent change category on the right faster every year. So the state has definitely been keeping up, as it were, with the costs here. And this is what we would expect to see in any system with growing populations. Also want to note that just because we looked at it, all the information we're going to talk about today is fee for service, but that MCO portion has remained consistent. Don't look at that. That's like the data dust when it transitions the 14, but it's essentially the same thing. So we see these proportional increases over time for both categories. All right, let's get really into the data. So we're starting out with a couple slides on program, right? So waiver spending. This one is still in alphabetical order, just because it helps you kind of find what you're looking at in your various categories. But overall, the highest spend is by far the caddy waiver. Caddy waiver increased from 1.5 to 3.2 billion dollars between 2021 and 2025. There's many factors. It's not purely the CADI waiver. The other facet I would like to mention today is that there's going to be a number of especially when we get to the service category and the services, there's a number of shifts that happen within the data too. So those will be follow-up elements to look at overall. But overall, we definitely just see some significant growth in that CADI waiver total. Am I saying that right? Yep. Okay. Second up, we have the DD waiver at 2.8 billion. Then you have the nursing facility and personal care assistance down at the bottom as number 3 and 4. Let's go to the next slide. So when you see this and start thinking of proportion, this tells a much clearer story, right? We have these really two heavy hitters with CADI and DD being pretty much double the next two. And then you have nursing facility, personal care assistance with that just above $1 billion. And then just a note that all those others to the right of personal care assistance adds up to almost exactly the same amount as personal care assistance. So it's a big gap between personal care assistance and the other waivers. Now let's take a look at the program changes. So the program changes here are to look at the proportion. Again, some of this has moved overall, but I don't think there's probably a whole lot of surprises here. Elderly waiver is the most changed between 2021 and 2025. It's more than doubling in 5 years, which is really big. CADI waiver has also more than doubled, which means that it's not only the largest bucket, but it is also the second quickest growing of all of the waiver programs. Alternative care is the last program that grew much more than 50%, which I would consider to be so we're going to go down the waivers. We're looking at alternative care, CAC, DD waiver, all of which grew at about 50%. Bring in personal care assistance as well. All those are probably growing about what you would expect to see for a program for 5 years. It's about 10% growth on average, which is moving correctly. Now, I do want to show your eyes down to the bottom, because what's interesting about these last 3 categories, well, actually, really, it's the last 2. They're decreasing or barely increasing. But what's really interesting about home care and ICFDD is that while, yes, they have decreased in the last 5 years, the last 3 years, they've increased pretty substantially. So going up for home care, going up from 48 million to 67 million is a pretty big proportional increase. And then 89 up to 93, it's moderate, but it's still increasing year over year for the last 3. And then lastly, before we take our first break, we're going to talk about this in this format. So this is the same data that we just looked at, but just to see there's a pretty consistent or a difference across the board in the growth rates for all these waivers, with some being really modest and some being very significant. So with that being said, I think this is the first point. We can go back and forth to any of the other slides talking about the waivers or the total buckets if anybody has any questions, but I'd really like to hear your thoughts if there was anything interesting in here that you'd like to share with the work group.
Alex, did you look at the drivers of number of people versus the cost per person, and what's driving particularly the ones over 50%?
Still working on the per capita data. Wanted to have some more guidance on exactly where we wanted to look, because it is a lot of data to look at. So we didn't look at it for everything, but we are going to be looking at that for certain categories where there's interest.
You're looking for, like, I'm not surprised that I used to work on these forecasts. You saw the trend coming. We saw the trend coming. But I'm curious about what is it, the number of people, the cost per person, and then if it's cost versus number of people, where is that cost coming from? What's driving that?
Is there a certain, so different waivers obviously all going to have different ideas on that, but you mean
Yes.
So within CADI, if we take CADI, for example, we can take that apart. We can assess how many people were in the waiver at the various year points doing a per capita analysis. And that per capita, we could kind of see within that waiver what services were specific. We didn't want to try to do that out the gate because again, every waiver is going to have a bunch of different pieces. And so looking at the top level here, but that's really helpful.
Right, like are people moving between waivers? Are they shifting into different waivers? Like, are there? Yeah, and then what's driving the cost and what's driving them to shift their investment? I don't know the answer. It's what I think.
Amazing question though. Anybody else? All right, top line forecast. Let's move on to the more interesting things. Okay, so what we're gonna do here is this is a 9-slide series of services. These are all of the services that are more than $150 million by service category. We're gonna start with, so just to kind of orient people to these slides, the first point is that each slide will have a blue row, and that's a service category, and the services below are the actual service spent. So looking at this one, this is the highest cost service category, community residential services. When we're looking at that orientation, other note is that we rounded these to make them more comparable, just at easy glance. So if you'd like to know the down to the penny, I have that too. So if you're looking at this though, what you'll see is that of that community residential services adult is almost all of it. It's about 2.1 billion of $2.1 billion with that, well, I mean, $90 million, it's not very much, right? With community service residential services child at 90. You also see that we've maintained historical data. Anyway, we've left in the services as they were listed in 21 and 22. So you do see here foster care, child corporate, SLS adult, and SLS child as options that are no longer currently in operation. All right. Continuing on, the second of the category costs are nursing home, room, and board. If you were paying really close attention, you will notice that this was a pretty big drop down. We had, what was it, 2.2 billion and then down to 1.2 billion. So about half is the second up most expensive charge. Of this, we'll start to notice that subacute care comes in at just under $1 billion in 2025, and that was about 80% of the total spend. So that's really where this is having the heaviest part, with other special charges coming in at a very far second. Services in these category benefit from their size and or constrained. Other services in this category all have moderate growth or shifting operations within the category. I'm looking here at the almost no change between room and board level 1 and the overall kind of fluctuations and overall decrease of room and board level 2. So overall, just kind of some shifts in total costs, but not a huge driver other than the subacute care. All right, up next, we got PCA. So PCA comes in at just under 1.2 billion. So it's just about the same exact level as that nursing care. The PCA care assistance really has, this is actually over the next 2 slides. So I might bebop around this one for the most part. The top service, the biggest share of this category is PCA 1-to-1. It's about 800 million right there. You slide to the next slide. Just under that is the PCA complex 1-to-1 at 283. These two categories, or not, I mean, I'm confused. These two services within the service category account for 98% of the costs in this service category. So almost all the money is in personal care assistance 1-to-1 or personal care assistance complex 1-to-1. And overall, pretty clearly that the other categories around just shuffle. All right, so what you'll notice is we've now dropped below service categories of $1 billion or more. So we have customized living and consumer-directed community supports. Looking at these, obviously, customized living 24-hour is the majority, but I can't imagine that it's a big distinction between the other. So really, it's just customized living. The consumer-directed community supports has the vast majority in personal assistance. about $544 million of the total 722. And treatment and training and self-directed support activities are second and third. All right, individualized home supports. We got another category with 2 slides, so forgive us here, but we're sitting at a growth of about $300 million in this category. So this is another one that's pretty much doubled. Just keeping that eye on that top row, going from 280 to 690, more than doubled. But this category has a ton of shifting around in it. But roughly 98% of the spend in fiscal year 21 can be seen in individualized home supports with and individualized home supports without training. It's another one where almost all the services are coming from those 2 services, or almost all the service expenditures are coming from those 2 services. Go to that next one. It is also worth noting that in here you can see again, oh, one more, back up.
Back this way?
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, you're fine. It is also worth noting that this is another space where there was obviously some shifting around of the categories. So some of that increase in services above can also be probably attributed to these costs moving into those categories over time. All right, so here I don't have a whole lot on these. We're starting to get into lower dollars, but the next 3 categories of night supervision to family residential services and case management, all stalwarts of service care. As we're looking at these also see some pretty big jumps. I think the story as we continue on, we'll begin to continue to see that the impacts of changes gets bigger. So the percent of change, while the dollars might be smaller, will be pretty significant. So looking particularly at night supervision services going from about 50 million to 270 million. That's one of the bigger hunts. We're not trying to look too much at these category changes because obviously there are shifts in how they spend, but it's worth keeping in mind as they've grown. And then also worth keeping in mind is the consistency of case management services. Often in my experience with LTSS, case management services are kind of a backbone service, and you can tend to see the actual cost and calibrate to those case management services in many contexts. So what we see here is a substantial but also moderate increase over time. All right, last 2 before we take a little break. But over here, these are the services, these last 2 with over 150 million integrated community supports and home care nursing. We can definitely see significant increase in the integrated community supports over the last 5 years, starting with 500,000 all the way up to 200 million. And that's a very large increase over time. And home care nursing, overall increasing moderately, but still pretty significantly over the last 5 years, 123 million up to 161. But again, percentage-wise, it's not particularly massive. Okay, so we're gonna stop here for a second. I would like to ask if anybody finds anything interesting or if they have any ideas about what to look at.
Thank you, Jeremy. We have 2 hands up or 3 hands up. Let's start with, and then a hand in the room. So we'll start online with Lori, and then Anna, then Zania, then Alex. So, Lori.
Yeah, hi. I was just looking for some clarification specifically around the integrated community supports, mainly because that was a new service. So a lot of the expenditures in that prior to 21, 22, 23, we would have seen in daily SLS, we would have seen in in-home supports. So I just want everybody to know that the growth, it's not as ginormous as it looks if we're paying attention to these figures.
Thank you. Anna.
I think a lot like the last set of data that we saw, it would be really helpful to understand the differences in all of the growth here. Which years resulted in the increase due to the competitive workforce factor increasing. We have those every 2-year rate increases. compared to the changing number of people who are accessing specific types of services. So again, just like the last set, I think understanding the people component is going to be important in addition to the total dollars. Thank you.
Thank you. Sonia?
I was just going to piggyback on the comment about ICS. Started off in 2021 with 500,000. I think there were more programs functioning under a ICS model than previously was considered. There's also customized living, some customized living apartment buildings, some non-official kind of settings were set up where there were in-home supports. So I think it's a really good point. It's not like it just jumped from nowhere to 200 million. Those were previously programs that people were in different programs before, and then there was a process to move them into ICS. So I think that's helpful to note.
Yes, thank you, Sonia. Alex?
Well, I was gonna ask about that. So that's super helpful, but did anything then go down?
Did anything go down? Not much. There are a few things in there. I can
Shift it.
it obviously, I mean, if we go back to that first slide, everything's increased pretty substantially, pretty quickly in all of the categories. So while yes, there is shifting involved, the shifting has resulted in an overall net increase for almost all of these categories.
Okay. My other question is, did you review the DHS forecast executive summaries online that talk about the causes behind the changes?
That's helpful. I didn't know that.
I was just making a note.
Thank you.
Thank you. I got it up on my screen, so I've got you can tell them it's a very useful document.
Thank you. I really do appreciate that. I did not know about that.
Jillian.
Yeah, we'll go to Jillian and then maybe we'll also Jensina asked to repeat that question as well.
They asked if the forecasted some executive summaries of the forecast.
So we're looking at this from the highest level of spending, but like I guess my challenge with looking at this is it doesn't actually tell us the number of people served or the cost per person or where else those services would be accessed. Like we saw really clearly that Caddy was the highest level of expenditure. Well, Caddy, like I would say probably a majority of people on Caddy do use CDCS. So CDCS takes away the expenditure from PCA and absorbs it into the caddy. It's like this isn't necessarily super useful information in figuring out where to find savings. Because like if we cut caddy qualifications, for example, that money is just going to go somewhere else because the people and the needs aren't going to stop existing. So like these really broad overviews, like I'm not quite sure without breaking it down into where that money is going within that program. How do we identify spaces and ways to save money? Because I mean, we could cut Caddy altogether and it is not going to save us that number. It's just going to put those expenses somewhere else.
I would say that I must have been too quiet earlier. I think that we can look at those data, but I would just like to say that this is, you know, billions and billions of dollars of expenditure data. So I would need to know what you would be interested in looking at. I couldn't come in here and show you the per capita cost for all of these categories over 5 years. It would be a 9.5-hour presentation, and I'm not sure you would get too much information from it. So I think as we continue on and develop these ideas, I'm so excited to dive into them further and help you look at where you want to understand the per capita costs.
Like I, for one, would really like to understand how Caddy's breaking down. Like we keep referring to Caddy as the most expensive, but like, because I mean, if we reduce Caddy spending, like I said, it's just going to go somewhere else. Like if all of a sudden I can't access my like my staffing hours through Caddy because of changes, I'm going to stop using Caddy and I'm going to go start using PCA and then using other things. Do you know what I mean? Like it's hard to look at these numbers and determine how to make cuts when we don't know how that money is being spent in those numbers.
Yeah, totally understand.
Thanks, Jillian. Question, Jay, you have your hand up? And then Colin, sorry. Chair.
Go to Jay first.
Take
Oh,
myself
sorry,
off
Jay.
mute here. Yeah, I'm working on it. You know, we're talking about, well, if you look at the shared website that we've set up, I have proposed, we'll work together on a slide presentation together, that I've shared with some folks here. You know, we're talking about cutting rates, and we're talking about these cuts. And part of our charter, I go back to this, is a no harm, is our no harm policy. So some of the or all of the reductions in costs and savings that are captured are in that I've proposed are in process change and in you know, some program change. And I think to answer Jillian's questions, there in my analysis and in my report, it does break down how many people are receiving which of these services. And you'll see I've got this information laid out, not as detailed as this, but in something very similar to this. And you can see where our costs, you know, where our costs were and where they're going. But nonetheless, you know, so what I'm proposing and what I'm looking at is trying to implement some changes that don't prevent any rate decreases and also don't prevent anybody from losing services. So those are the two primary drivers. And what we're looking at, or what I'd like to see, is to have a discussion to take it back to the legislation to make some changes in programs, tighten up some of this, tighten up some of these areas that we know we're wasting money on. You can take a look at, you know, I encourage you to take a look at my report, because it might accelerate this process by, I don't know, 3 to 6 months, but take a look at it. I'll continue to add to it and to enhance it, you know, as the weeks and months go on. So I'll keep adding to it for us. Nonetheless, our charter is, you know, really to do no harm, and we can do it through. I've already, you know, like I said, proposed we can do it through process changes. Now, I need people like Tara. I mean, I have no idea how this stuff works in the legislature. I'm just, you know, I don't deal with that, but you know, we've got some representatives on our board that can help us format something like that, or get it presented correctly. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Jay. Colin?
Yeah, you know, one thing I wanted to share with the group, because not everyone may have this level of detail with some of these programs. You know, when we were looking at the chart, kind of like total spending per program, CADI, DD were the highest, but this also applies to BI and CAC, even though they're much lower spends. Is that we kind of have unified payment methodologies across all of those programs for services. So it could be interesting to look at kind of what is the spend by program for certain services. But a large part of that is just going to be a function that DD and CADI are the largest populations for those 4 programs. So a lot of the spend is going to be driven by the number of people who are served by those programs. So we also, when we're thinking of recommendations and solutions too, if we're making changes to rates or service limits or whatever we decide to do, if a service is available across multiple programs, we'll want to think about, how it would play out across those programs as well, just because of those similar or same policies.
Thank you, Colin.
All right.
I think we have two messages in the chat that from Roxanne that I'll read aloud to everyone. First, she said, it seems most helpful to understand the special causes of the fastest growing top 3 waiver programs. And then her other comment was that asking, is there national comparison data for waiver programs in other states with per person served, or perhaps a few states with comparable costs of living?
Yeah, I think one note I was taking on your first comment, Roxanne, was I think it would be helpful to kind of overlay some of these with legislative changes that may have gone into place. Like we were noting earlier, there was some consolidation that's obviously leading to zeros on some of this. But I also know, like, for instance, there were rate changes passed in 2023 that's probably impacted spending in 2024 and 2025. So I think that's something that we can take back and maybe identify, like, legislative changes that may have led to some of these spending changes, and not to suggest that that's where we go, but an option could be to reverse those changes as a spending reduction strategy. So that would be one consideration. So that's something that we can take back. I think we could probably look at per person spending in other states. I think when we get into the level of detail at a service level, it's really difficult to say, okay, we spent this much on ICS, integrated community supports state, and say, all right, what are we spending in Wisconsin or Iowa on something similar? Because the nature of a similar service, I mean, it may not exist in those states, or it may be like 50% of that service and 50% of another service. So it's really, really hard to make apples to apples comparisons at the service level. But at kind of an HCBS waiver level, for instance, we can look at per capita spending by state, absolutely.
All right, let's go on to our smaller service categories, to my favorite slide. All right, so this is so if instead of the other categories having the blue row, these are all small enough that we've removed the sub-services, and these are purely service categories, right? So this slide includes a lot of smaller service categories, right? We have day support services in here. Again, small relatively, it's $150 million, just barely under, for fiscal year 2025. Crisis respite care services are included in here. You got a little adult day service. All of these service categories over the last 5 years have substantially increased. And this is what I think is particularly, well, not all of them. Anyway, overall, if you take the total spend of fiscal year 25, you end up with a, so even though these categories are much smaller figures than the billions in earlier slides, almost all these categories have more than doubled in the last 5 years. These categories accounted for less than $500 million in fiscal year 21. But by fiscal year 25, it was more than 1.1 billion, with more than $650 million in growth over the last 5 years. So while these categories are smaller, overall, the sum of their parts increases pretty substantially over this 5-year period, more than doubling. Again, we would expect to see a kind of 5-year growth pace at about 50%, but with more than double, we definitely see some huge pieces here. So if there's some categories, we definitely want to identify. If there's some shifting within the categories that you identify here, it's definitely worth noting, but overall, just significant growth. And then last category, the story on this slide is much less clear than the other. It contains a ton of groupings, but they increase, they decrease. This is where those decreases were that we were talking about earlier, where there are quite a few categories that have decreased roughly in the million range, right? But the probably one of the biggest notes here is the foster care shift, which we kind of knew about going into this, that foster care had moved from FY21 almost $500 million down to just a little bit going on in 2025. And an overall shift of foster care in all of the systems overall. But yeah, you definitely don't see that transition quite the same as you do in that first slide. All right, well, we have 2 more slides, so we're almost there. So here we're in relatively small numbers. These are all in less than $1 million a year category. They're all really good services to have. I'm assuming quite a few of them are places to step up and or support more, or they're kind of secondary categories that we're seeing. So extended home care nursing, for example, there at the top, going down to that discretionary services at the very bottom. Overall, we just see these categories, and we definitely are looking forward to finding more places to identify going forward. Last slide. This is not as helpful as the waiver level. So when you're at the waiver level, you're at that really top tier level. When you're looking at percent change, it is kind of more or less expected to be a change. But when you get into lower cost service categories, it gets a little bit more finicky. Particularly like individualized home supports increasing over that time period, more than doubling. Integrated community supports, we noted, it wasn't a service. So that 500,000 growing up to just about 200 million, it's not really growing like that. That's just the trajectory of the program as it gets up and running. But overall, we definitely do see some interesting stories here, particularly night supervision. I think that one was something that I was pretty particularly interested in. Growing from a fairly substantial 50 million all the way up to 221 million. All right, so this is our last time. We got some hands.
Got about 4 minutes-ish for questions. So Anna, I think oh, sorry.
I think Jillian's hand was up first and then.
Apologies, Jillian, then Anna.
Mine's super simple. Going back to a couple slides before with adult day services and day support services and crisis respite and respite, I would like a digger deep on those numbers because we consistently hear at the Capitol, I consistently hear as an info line that there are no day support services available, that every single one has wait lists, that so many of them have closed. So I'm very curious how we've seen that level of growth in a service that is being reported by our community as not being available. Though I think I may have just actually answered my own question, and I think I want to put in a new data request. Can we also see the numbers for day support services, crisis respite care services, and adult day services from, can we say, 2015 to 2020? Because I think a lot of those numbers went down due to the pandemic and are actually just coming back up from the pandemic. So I would like to see pre-pandemic numbers as well. I think I may have just answered my own question. Please I just want more data. Anna, say other things. I answered my.
We're gonna pass it in here because we have a good response from DHS.
Yeah, Jillian, unfortunately for this purpose, DHS spending data auto deletes on a 5-year rolling basis. So this level of detail prior to 2020 is lost to the winds, unfortunately. We still know what we spent on programs.
Why would we auto delete that? I have like the number one thing I said in 2020 was a lack of data is a form of discrimination. Why the hell wouldn't we keep that data, especially when we know that people were like, we see this growth. We see this growth. Is this actual growth, or is this the fact that the only data we have to compare it to because we deleted it is when people were stuck at their homes with no services? I really would like that is a data request. I would like to know from DHS why the hell we would delete that data. Like, that makes no sense to me.
We will take that back for you.
Yeah, we'll take it back. Thanks, Jillian. Anna?
Yeah, I don't know that this is something I'll have an answer to today, but just wanted to know as we look at some of the primary increases in spending in human services that are delivered by people. Have we looked at the impact on our overall tax base? One of the things that was brought up at Anchor last year was a study that was done in another state about rate increases and their direct impact on the amount of tax revenue that the state generates. And so I think as we look at, what we're going to do to impact LTSS spending, I just want to make sure that we're not inadvertently doing something that's going to, affect the tax base on the other side. So do you have any data around that in Minnesota? Like we pay staff more money, we generate more tax revenue.
You will have to take that back. That is a complicated question, but we can look and see what we have.
Okay, and if you don't know about studies in other states, I can try to take that back to Anchor too and see which state it was that brought that up. I just don't remember anymore, but we could certainly look at the data points they used for that.
Yeah, anything that you could provide there would be really appreciated.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks, Colin.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. We have about 15, 20 seconds. Jay, we're noting your comment in the chat. Anything that you wanted to add or anyone else before we move on to the next topic? Oh, no, I'm just. Oh, sure. Sherry.
Sherry?
Well,
Hi, Sherry from Itasca. Just wanted to also just remind people about services in rural areas of Minnesota compared to the metro. I think it's really important. I'm looking at all of this data, but in rural areas, we do not have the same kind of service availability, staffing availability. When I listen to the idea of county state cost sharing, we're a rural county and it's often, and the only reason why I'm bringing it up is because we are often feel kind of out of the loop when it comes to some of these decisions and how it can affect some of our folks that live here. Transportation is a challenge, extreme challenge. When you think about trying to get into town for just basic essentials or having service providers going out to where people live, and there's just so many hurdles and challenges that come with living in a rural area when it comes to services as well.
thank you, Sherry, for bringing that forward. All right, everyone. We are going to move on. Obviously, this is not the end of our discussion here, and we'll continue to be discussing this in the work groups as we move forward looking at cost savings ideas. So we will be coming back to this. Thank you, Jeremy, very much for your presentation and for analysis of that data. All right, so we have roughly 10 minutes left. We'll go through just a couple of quick updates here as we close out. The first one, pardon me, is the community partner survey. So we are in the final stages of preparing the survey link for distribution. So we anticipate the survey link will be ready for distribution early next week. Once that is ready, we will send it out to council members. So you all please distribute to your networks. We'll really appreciate that. The survey will be open for 4 weeks. We'll be monitoring the survey and looking at ways if we need to promote additional responses if we're not getting many, and working with DHS on that. Then we'll be analyzing the results and sharing with the council in the April meeting. So that'll be one of the presentations for the April meeting. But want to pause and see if anybody has any questions. Any other additional distribution lists? We have a hand, Jillian.
I just want to ask if this can be sent out to the group prior to its launch, just to be reviewed for accessibility.
Thank you, Jillian. We did send it out at the beginning of January, I believe. And then we've done that review through our system. So it'll be in our survey system. And I don't know myself, but we have done the accessibility.
We did
review.
an accessibility review, yeah.
Yeah, thank you. That said, if you or anybody, somebody communicates to you that they experience any problem with accessing the survey, please let us know and we'll attend.
I mean, so is it also being reviewed for um like all forms of accessibility, not just ADA basics, like intellectual accessibility, executive function accessibility, like literal thinking accessibility for the neurodiverse community? Like, I'm not looking for the bare minimum accessibility, I'm looking for actual accessibility.
Yeah, thank you, Shalane. Yeah, understood. I can give you more details on the accessibility review that was done. I don't have that at my fingertips, but you should have the draft questions definitely from January.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'll take that back and follow up. Thank you, Jillian. Any other questions or thoughts on the survey?
Jennifer said to make sure to send the survey out to all tribal nations in Minnesota.
Yes, yes. Thank you. Thank you, Jennifer.
So we're gonna request everyone on the council's help with that, because we will not be independently sending the survey out, because we do want it to come from trusted sources. So we are going to be asking every council member to help us distribute the survey as widely as possible, using your network. So if folks get it multiple times, that's okay. That's better than folks not getting access to it. So yeah, please help us make sure that we are getting this out to as broad of an audience as possible.
Yes, thank you for that, Sarah. And Jensina put something similar in the comment, and DHS is also going to support distribution too. Perfect.
See, Sherry, you still have your hand raised. Did you have another comment? Thank you.
All right. We're pulling into the station, I think. Legislative progress report update. So if you'll recall, the legislation did require legislation did require that a progress report be submitted to the legislature in March with updates on the work of the council to date. So that report is being finalized, and once finalized will be sent to the council, sent to you, will be distributed to you all. The brief updates are just the activities that led to the formation of the council, the meetings you all have had to date with a summary of the meetings, the formation of the work groups, some highlights like Sarah shared today on the research and the National Transfer Cost Savings Report, the progress on the Community Partners Survey, progress towards the financial analysis. You'll note that we're a little bit more advanced, I think, now in this meeting than we were able to provide in the report, but it talks about the steps and how those steps are supporting the council's work. So again, the final progress report will be distributed later, probably later in March. I don't know that we have an exact date, but any questions or comments on the legislative progress report? All right, so to wrap up here, want to pause. Let's see, it is 3:53, so we can probably take about 2 minutes. Are there any general questions or comments from any of the council members?
I guess I've been thinking a lot about how we get to, I've been thinking about how we get to kind of where we need to be as an advisory council to get to some results. And I see you have planned out when decisions are being made and all of that. And we have made an extensive amount of data requests from DHS, and I understand the timeframe for those and the work that is involved. So could you maybe talk about your vision for how you get us as an advisory group and the work groups to like a package of things for consideration? Because I think we only have 2 meetings between now and decisions. Is that right? I'm just trying to remember the cadence. I'm getting nervous.
Yes, understandably. And I think you all have a little bit more time. And Colin, please jump in if you have anything to add. So I think really, yes, to your point, in the work groups, and I saw that you all started to do this in the February meetings, really working towards consolidating your ideas and like, here's what we're going to do, and understanding that you may have some data and some data you might not. And so how do you progress with those ideas? So I think over the next couple of months for the work groups in particular, there's an opportunity to really dive in and look at, and PCG will support as needed, getting to these are the ideas we really want to hone into and focus on. And then coming back at the April meeting, then you'll have had 2 work group meetings by the time the whole council meets again. So then I think that if all the work groups could really be working towards coming back to April with more solid idea, this is really the direction we want to go. I think that puts you all on a good course. But Colin, anything to add?
Yeah, I think I just say over those next few months, once work groups are getting to the point where you're thinking, okay, I think we have fleshed this out enough. We're thinking we might want a fiscal estimate on this idea, like communicate that we may have some questions that we want to get from the work group to get a little bit more detail on how that idea would work to provide that estimate. But I think we're ready to help support those estimates through the work groups when the time is right.
And also just for those folks online, that was Alex who asked the question and Michelle and Colin responding.
Thank you. We did not adhere to the meeting agreements and ourselves. Any other general questions or comments? Okay, I'm going to review a couple of next steps here. So upcoming things to expect, like we had just talked about, we'll be sending out that link to the community partner survey, and if council members could be sharing that in their networks, that's greatly appreciated. When we send out the meeting minutes no later than March 5th for this meeting, we will also include that data and information log where we've been working to respond, working with DHS to respond to the different data and just general questions that have come up during the meetings. And then I had this in next steps, and Alex, you kind of teed it up nicely. Work groups continuing to hone in on ideas for cost savings to bring to the April meeting. Any other takeaway items that I missed that anyone wants to mention? All right. Well, then the last slide, you've seen this before. This is just, again, some of the resources that are available to support you all in your work. Jensina is there for board support. I know a lot of you reached out to her for scheduling and those different agenda details about the meetings and the work groups. Please feel free to reach out to me or SharePoint issues. I think that is wrapping us up and to move on to then public comment, which I don't think we have anybody signed up. So I want to just double check because we don't have anybody in the room physically from the general public. And then for online, we did open the chat function if the public attendees online wanted to send public comment. And I didn't see any public sign up. One thing I'd like to confirm, if someone doesn't mind, who was on as an attendee from the general public, would you mind just putting like hi in the chat so at least I know that the chat is available to the general public?
I believe someone did who's in the chat.
Oh,
Dawn, who's in the chat, has messaged a message.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. Okay. Perfect. Well, then I know that it does have access. So I guess we do a last call for public comment. So Dawn, does that mean you'd like to provide public comment?
It's like she's left.
Okay. Oh.
Just wanted to let us know she was here.
Thank you.
She did ask that we share the survey.
Oh, share
yeah.
the survey with her. Okay. Yeah, perfect. Yes, we will be saving in the chat. So we'll have that send her the survey. All right. Well, council members, Colin, as chairperson, do you want to end the meeting now?
Yep. Just really appreciate everyone attending today. We'll continue working together, providing you data to support the council work group's work, and look forward to connecting again soon. Appreciate it.